the questions are fine. Yeah. Let me know, like interrupt or let me know anything.
No.
That's because I think the market's always been more about like B2C works differently, B2C works differently. Did I say the same thing? No.
Yeah, B2C and B2B.
Yeah, this is my problem that I'm going through.
Everybody keeps saying like, can we dumb this down? Can we dumb this down? How do I dumb this down like further? Because at the end of the day, it is, hey, these are the steps you need to follow. But there are like 38 steps.
So we are here with Harinie. I think Harinie is someone I have got to know through multiple, not only LinkedIn posts, but actually I got to know you from a couple of people at the office. And I remember when we were starting off with building the community, the first thing that came in mind was also doing something around women in sales. And when I mentioned that, a couple of them did mention your name. And they were like, if you get Harinie Sekaran on the podcast, you're going to be like, that'll be like the best thing to have. So I
who are these
said,
people? I gotta send them something.
they are there. There are quite a few of them actually. You will be very shocked to know that. So when I got to know about it, I said, okay, let me send you a request. Let me see what exactly it is about, because sales is slightly new to me, even though that's something I've been doing for a while, on and off. How did you start your sales journey? So I think your introduction is something.
um, Quite accidentally, because I career-wise, right, a lot of my early decisions were more just going with the flow. Once I finished my master's, I was very certain that I did not want to be in research, because it's kind of what I did my bachelor's in. In my master's, I'd also done like a business degree, like my master's, right? So there was a business certification that happened, and then I got my first internship was in marketing and sales, and then my first job that ended up being a job. I was offered a position there, which was a little bit of a surprise, because I graduated in 2009. That was at the top of the recession that was happening. Nobody else in my batch had graduated, so I was like, I didn't want to stay in school any longer. So I said, okay, fine, let's just go see what this is all about. And I found that I really enjoyed, what I had to do. So, however, at that point of time, there wasn't as much information about how to do this. People would just, Google information, call up people, talk to receptionists, get past the gate. You were talking about those kind of days, right? Like
Yeah.
15 years ago, that's how sales was done. I still enjoyed it. That's what I found. And that's how I got started with sales. And then once I moved back to India, to me it just made sense to continue along the same path, because I was liking what I was doing. So after a series of sales roles over the next 5-6 years, eventually I said I'm going to take a break and figure out what I want to do next. At which time, in my some of the customers that I'd been working with in my previous role, they wanted to know if I could set up a sales team for them. These guys were based in Australia. So then I said, okay, why not? I mean, we can just take it up. It's not a big deal. Just finished like this trek in the Himalayas. So I was all high on fresh air. I said, anything is possible. Let's do this. And then once I took that up, I realized that it was very hard to find good resources and train them across overseas, right? So I said, like, why don't we try with Indian resources, and we will see if we can make it work. And by 2016, I realized that I needed a company, because I couldn't just keep doing this ad hoc consulting thing, right? That's kind of how I started with Ladle. My journey in sales was essentially started out accidentally, found out I really enjoyed it. My business was also accidental. I did not really think I'm going to be an entrepreneur. This is my dream. It didn't happen that way. It happened, and I ended up really enjoying it. I think that the more conscious decisions happened later.
Interesting. So Lidl technically didn't start then. It
No.
started like right after you actually did this, planned this entire thing of a consulting.
Correct.
You moved it around.
That's how it started. And in fact, even in the early years, right, like I'm talking from 2016 to even 2019, 2020, there was no real, I've got to build this into the next best consultancy in the world. It was more, I'm going to take it as it comes. To me today that sounds very strange, because today you're all about like, I want to make get my revenue here, and then I want to get my revenue there, right? But at that point, I think people start businesses for very different reasons, and for me it was about the freedom, it was about the ability to build something on my terms, and I really like that.
I wanted to ask what do you think about sales from what it was back then? Because when you say that, things were quite different back then, uh, how exactly did people sell back then to how things have changed? Like the tools are multiple now. It was
Yeah.
like an Excel back then to now having so many tools like Clay and etc. for automation. So, what exactly do you think is how it's been before 10 years, before you built Lidl, after you built Lidl, and like how it is now?
Yeah, like the whole back then reminds me of how old I am. But so it was incredibly easier and harder, right? In I want to say, when I first started out in my early days, it was mostly cold calling. There would be a gatekeeper, so you kind of had to talk around the receptionist, get them on your side, etc., and you'd have to develop tactics for that. Emails were not really readily available, so you had to kind of do research to get like a
Yeah.
couple of emails. A lot of companies would not really invest in databases, good databases, right?
They
um,
also had those visiting cards
yeah,
back then. You had to like
yeah,
copy everything right from the email ID, like the complicated names to like making sure that they're right emails.
correct.
So that's kind of the era that we are talking about, technically.
Absolutely. And a lot more was face to face. You can have any number of phone conversations, but there were a couple of days, I think 2 days in a week, when I had just earmarked for, I'm going to go and visit these people. Not with an appointment, like just go, get an appointment, and see if I can just meet people. And we would do a lot of road shows. That's kind of how how sales worked in those days. Fast forward to today, and interestingly, I feel like we're going to go back to face sales, because with the gamut of tools that's available, and with AI making everything so much easier, there is so much noise in the market today that your way to stand out is to actually pick up the phone and call people, or to go meet them in person. So it's kind of how we've come full circle in that sense. But in a lot of ways, it's easier, right? Because you have incredible databases,
Yeah.
which not only give you contact information, but also give you context about a particular buyer. What particular situation are they in right now? Do they have budget? Do they have some issues that they would specifically like to solve? Obviously, nothing is directly available, but there are signals that you can map to intent, right? You have that, and then you have tools that help you set up sequences and run campaigns very easily. There are other tools that you can string together to make sure that your multiple channels, inbound, outbound, everything is working in tandem. So these are very good days for sales. But I also think that today, if you want to be in sales, you've got to be very good with ops. Sales ops is as important as sales. That wasn't the case, 10,
Back
15
then.
years. Yeah, 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 absolutely not.
People that I've interacted with, right? Be that like people from the enterprise level, the BDRs, SDRs, etc., are not at a stage where they can take decisions.
Mhm.
I remember a recent conversation where that person who is currently a sales head in the company mentioned that why do I want my AEs or my SDR or BDRs to take decisions? Like, I don't want them to select an account. I don't want them to do that part. That's my part. That's my strategy work. I don't know if that's across all uh, enterprise level companies too. But then we also look at companies that are at a startup level or companies that are doing pretty well. Uh, there, I think everyone has to become a decision maker, be able to take the decisions on time or take the right call in terms of which customer to contact, when to contact, etc. I think a lot of decision also goes on them in terms of right from the time that they start. Have you like seen something like this as a pattern?
If I'm being very honest, I kind of see why a sales head would say that they don't necessarily want the SDRs making the decisions about what accounts to target. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Lots of times, SDRs are people who've kind of just finished college and they've come out, right?
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily have the base of knowledge from which to take that call. They're just learning. So in that scenario, which is that a lot of SDRs are just out of college, or they have maybe 1 2 years of experience at the most, decisions they make, you can let them run with it, because you should allow some leeway so people get a
Yeah.
chance to feel like they're doing they have some agency in what they're
Yeah.
doing. However, I would not imagine that they would necessarily make the right decisions all the time, because they don't have the experience or the expertise to be able to do that. And one of the challenges I think these days is that people do not train their SDRs or A's, particularly in SaaS, right? Because everybody is always running after some important target.
Yeah.
They are huge targets, they have very short timelines. So almost always people hire and expect them to perform like very, very quickly.
Very quickly.
So there's no room for error, there's no time to make mistakes, and that is the problem. So when that's the case, and those are the targets that a sales head is running with, definitely they would feel like I don't want them making decisions because I have this mapped out. It's a problem, but I think it'll correct itself in time. I do think that in the last 4 to 5 years itself, nobody's really focused on training people, and there's never any time. There's almost always huge targets at every level. At every level, like an
Yeah.
SDR has that target, E has that target, regional head that target, head of the country has that target as well. And it's gotten increasingly harder also, right? Like as we get closer to
Yeah.
2025. So I understand that, but the interesting thing is I have had the experience where in enterprises, particularly in countries outside of India, I've seen even managers or senior managers have decision making capacity,
Yeah.
up to certain levels, right? They have budgets that they have discretionary budgets that they can spend. A senior manager can probably do $5,000 per month spend. A manager can do like $1,500 to $2,000 per month spend. Obviously, it has to get vetted by higher ups, but they have that capability. However, in startups, more often than not, I found the decisions are centralized. In fact, it's not even the head of sales. A lot of times, it's the founder who has to make the decision, which I understand, right? Because at that level, of the founders carrying a lot of the knowledge about where they want to go in their heads.
Yeah.
And like a sales head can vet it, but then the final decision about do I want to put my money here is sometimes only taken by the founder. When you talk about larger companies, like companies at the series B, series C levels, then decision making is a little bit more decentralized. But particularly before that, I've seen that almost always the founders get involved in all the decisions.
That's exactly what was like the one that took me aback. But yeah, going back to also knowing, given that you worked with so many companies, so many industries in the last 10 years now, since Lidl actually
Correct.
started, and even before that, when you were doing the consulting,
Correct.
what exactly what exactly have you seen the lessons that you've learned when you work with these industries? Do you end up seeing like a similar trend where they ask you to do something that's same as what another company has done probably previously, or even like recently for that matter? Or is there like something what they're not doing right at the moment? Anything that comes to your mind?
Um, to me, the biggest lesson that's come from working with companies across different industries is that sales is very segment specific. Like you take a product, there are many products that people will come and say I can sell to anybody. That's a huge red flag for us, because then what it just means to me that you have not understood the specific pain points of any one segment well, or you have understood it but you've not codified it for your sales team,
Yeah.
right? And today is not a day of generalization at all. I remember I was at this conference like a couple of years ago, and we said, I told somebody, like we do everything outbound. And I think the person did not catch the whole outbound part. And then you do everything. Like, how can you do everything? Like, I said outbound, I didn't say everything sales. That is the extent of specialization, right? And today, actually, even within outbound, there are people who specialize in email and people who specialize in calling. So that's the
Yeah.
extent of specialization which is there. So to me, the first thing is I would always tell somebody who, and there are still a lot of customers who come and tell us I can sell to anyone. And the first thing that my team will tell them is, can we get specific? Can we talk about specific industries, specific use cases? You're talking to me because I have expertise in selling into tech, for example, right? If I didn't have expertise in selling into tech, would you be wanting to work with me? I have all these case studies on my website. So let's talk specifically, right? That's one thing. Second thing is, I've had people come and say, I want to sell to example SaaS. But on their website, there is not a single SaaS case study. There's nothing to corroborate that these guys have expertise in that particular space. So your website, whatever your website is saying, and your sales message, they're not aligning. And for me, that's a problem. Alignment is not there, that's an issue. So we need specificity, we need alignment between the different channels through which the customer is getting to know you. That's the second thing for us. And the third is country specific. I think that the way that people purchase in the West is very different from how like
Yeah.
people in Asia purchase. So in India or even in other parts, right? Like for example in Singapore, even you could send out a message and that person will say, okay, let's get on a call, and they will be willing to learn from you about you. The West is a lot more skeptical than that. So if they receive a message and they find the message relevant and interesting, they'll go look at your website. So there's that alignment piece that you need. Then they'll go and look at third party websites. So they'll look for you on G2. They'll, if you're a services company, then they're looking at Clutch or Trustpilot or something like that. And only if they find that you're available in all of these places, then they might come on a call with you.
Got
So
it.
you've got to get your, all of your ducks in place before you actually go and launch a motion at all. So this is something that I think that we've learned over time. This is also very dynamic because 6 years ago when we were still doing multiple markets at that time, it was not this difficult. Less noise, therefore people are more willing and interested in just hearing you out. Whereas now nobody has the time. I think we were talking yesterday. I cleared my inbox on Friday, got it down to 0 mails, and I was very happy and proud about it. And Monday morning, I saw there were 180 emails again, and this is just one of my inboxes. I'm like, no, that's the amount of noise that I have as a startup founder. Imagine people in enterprises, the number of mails they'll be getting. So these are some of the lessons that have typically stood out to me. It's not really changed a lot. Be as specific as possible. Get close to your audience, figure out what their problem is, and speak specifically to them. Make sure you're aligned, your website and what you say in your LinkedIn and what your Insta pages are saying, what your employees are saying on calls. They're all the same things. And make sure that your geography specific. Like these are some of the things that I feel have always stood out to me. It surprises me that after all these years, we still have to see the same things.
I can't believe because when you say it, right, you need to say this even after so many years.
Yeah.
I have till date never seen anyone talk about geography specifics
Mm-hmm.
because that's something that kind of shocks me that no matter you know you are building a product today, your thought is always that I'll sell it to everyone that I know of. I can sell the product to literally anyone that I can think of, like how you said, but they don't know what the use case is or how they know the norms. Of course everyone's
Correct.
like making sure that they have this right certifications to enter the market. What they don't understand is the usage on how they do these products in the market they're building the product to the audience they know who they are building for and interacting with in the home market,
Correct.
as compared to talking to someone who's based out of probably a Europe market or US market or a UK market where the situation could be the same.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, it is going to be the same at certain spaces, right? But then it won't be exactly the similar kind of a scenario they deal with.
Correct.
So I think that is exactly where I think I find that alignment when I talk to you, because you're someone who's come upfront and told about the geographies being so different.
Absolutely.
That's the same thing I even have about different departments where they build a product and then later on it's more about when you sell to them, the dialogue can't be the same as you selling to
Absolutely.
a finance head or you selling to a CEO versus you selling it to an HR if it's a
Oh my
HR's
God,
product.
yes, yes, absolutely, yes. I agree with everything you said. Yeah, so the department space is very interesting because from the early days, I'm not even talking about now, from the early days, when you have a product, let us say, for example, that you have a analytics product, right? Analytics is something that you will sell to different, you have to sell to different departments
Yeah.
in an organization. Very small companies are probably not going to use. Let's say a mid-level company, mid-market size company. You have the head of analytics who will need to be told something different. You will have somebody who holds the budget, that will be the CTO, who will need to be told a different thing. And then you have the user. Most often, that's somebody in marketing and sales. They're the ones who are using all of the outcomes of the product.
Yeah.
They will need to be told something different. So the user is interested in the benefit that comes. The person in analytics is going to want to understand how it integrates with their existing tech stack.
Yeah.
Is it going to replace people? If so, what is that impact going to be? The CTO really cares about, why can't we just do this with some existing product? Do we really need this particular solution for this feature or functionality alone? And they need to be convinced that the budget or the spend is worth the outcome.
Yeah.
They are very different conversations, right? And all these three decision makers have to be told different things, brought to alignment, and then finally you need to have that closure conversation. And if you don't, if you go and talk to the CTO about how you're going to be able to do channel attribution so much easier with this particular product, they're not going to care because it's not their problem. And from the early days, we have found it. Initially, we were shocked we aren't anymore, that people don't understand this differentiation. But it continues today. Today, I feel there's a little bit more awareness about this, at least with our customers. Or maybe I just go into second and third level calls and my sales team has already sensitized our customers about it. But today, that's kind of how we even map. When we talk to a customer, we kind of tell them, tell me who your buyer is. Tell me, let's map what are their KRAs that are going to be impacted by this purchase. How are we going to positively impact it? How do we tie it to the overall top line and bottom line of the company so that budget gets allocated? When we start getting customers to think in that manner, it becomes a lot easier. The campaign flows a lot smoother. But now, even in startup sales, you end up having to talk to multiple decision makers. That's a change I've seen happen in recent years. I think it's a product of things getting a little bit tougher. People want to make sure that different departments are aligned, everybody sees value, and so on. Earlier, it was only in mid-market enterprise that you would have 5, 6, 7 stakeholders. Startups were mostly about founder, co-founder, maybe directors. Today, you see that they want to bring in other stakeholders as well, just to get that alignment. So we all need to be a little bit more conscious of the fact that this is happening, and we need to be saying different things to different people to get them to see the value that your product can offer.
So at the end of the day, I think, like you mentioned, right, people are seeing the value of probably a product is trying to get at the end of the day. But I always feel that sometimes, even though, right, even someone who's probably looking at data analytics today, I don't think they look at data. Like, the data first is very screwed up in a way. Let's be very honest. Because the data kind of, it's there. It's right there. Either it's not updated, which is like a bigger problem with the CRMs.
Almost always it's not updated.
CRM is never updated. It's entirely screwed up, where Fridays or Saturdays are dedicated to updating the CRM because that's the SOP you need to follow. Or it's going to be probably a month, end of the month, or maybe say around the end of a quarter when you actually have your review meetings where you need to present. That's when you start filling up your CRM to be able to provide your attainment numbers, etc. And I feel even after all of it, no one understands what the pattern is. Like, if you just randomly talk to an SDR or a BDR or AE or anyone today at a much more less than managerial level, or even a managerial level to an extent for certain cases, right? Not everyone will talk about patterns, the data patterns, in terms of what they are observing in the market. There's so many tools out there in the market. Everyone's building some new product out there. With AI, it's become even more, I won't say toxic, but it's even become more heavy in terms of the number of products that are going out or getting shipped out every single day. But none of them ever understand in terms of how the data is basically even, how do you even use that data at the end of the day? Something as simple as if you just make them sit on a call and ask them what's your attainment number, they'll give you the number exactly. But when you tell them that, what exactly are you observing? Are you seeing that people are not interested in something? Or are you observing something in terms of you're making calls at a certain time, but then it's not giving you the result? Or you're making a call to probably not the right prospect at that point because there's no requirement over there. So what have you had come across a scenario at Ladle where you've had a case you worked upon where you noticed that they didn't even like sell to the right ICP, or they
All the time.
or It can
Yeah.
also be like any kind of data driven decision making that never ever happened.
So the thing is with sales, a lot of selling still happens very intuitively, right? And we see this all the time. So when I said all the time, it might have seemed like a joke, but it wasn't. Happens all the time. Where we've had so many instances where we'll start with what's your ICP, and customers will say, I will sell to SaaS. So then we will tell them as a part of our GTM motion, so can you please give me a set of 10 customers that you've onboarded recently? And we want to understand who these customers are. We would like to interview them if possible. They'll give us like 10 customers. None of them will be in SaaS. We've seen this happen over and over. So I think that there is a bias on the basis of who did you build the product for, what industries are doing well, where do we wish we could sell, right? Rather than where is my sale actually happening. And I think that data is only valuable if you're looking at the right amount of data at the right time. So either there is too little information, so there's no information, or there's so much information, you're tracking everything, and you don't have a way to make sense of all of that information. So therefore, you don't have any information. We see both extremes all the time. Very, very often, again, this when coming to the ICP question, the other reason I think that people make a mistake about what ICP they should be selling to is because, especially when you've been selling for a while, you have a feeling that this is my segment. But for whatever reason, over the last year or so, that would have been skewed, but your mental image is not yet corrected according to the information that is coming in. And with CRMs not really being updated very regularly, which is the case in almost every company, right? I will not say that it's limited to X or Y, small company, large company. It happens all the time. Now, that's a little bit easier to fix today, by the way, because we have workflows built in where a lot does not have to be manual. But intuitiveness is I want to say the best ally, but also the worst problem when it comes to sales. Because I think that even today, when it comes to selling, that's what sets you apart from all the tools out there, right? Like your ability to have conversations, make strategic decisions, think about what you could offer in terms of value. But also, I think that that creates bias and you don't even realize it. And that's the problem as well. This is why people are selling into the wrong ICP. People are selling into the wrong country entirely. They want to enter markets because everybody else is entering that market,
Yeah.
but they should not be there. Like they cannot be there, and they don't want to see that, etc.
Because the product's not, or the service is not currently set for the market.
That particular market, yeah. I mean, like sometimes there are compliance issues. We've seen that also. Like during a GTM motion, we've seen a case where a product was not compliant for that particular market, and therefore they had to step back and take another 6 months. In other instances, we've seen where, let's say, for example, you have built a product, and normally people use it to solve a certain problem, like let's say in India
Yeah.
or in Singapore. Let's say it's attrition, and then you're going to go to a different market and say, I will help you solve your attrition problem, and the customer comes back and says, I don't have a big attrition problem. Then what?
I
What
remember you
happens?
mentioned a story
Yeah.
around this also
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you want
Yeah.
to share that in terms of what exactly happened in that scenario?
Exactly this, right? So in India, I think that this was a product that was built. Engagement products do a lot of things. I think one of the so from a HR perspective, it's engagement, but from a decision maker perspective, what is it giving them? A lot of times, it's about retaining employees, reducing attrition, right? And then we talk about that, largely, and make like our first 20, 30, 40 sales. But then when you go to a different market, in this case, it was like the US, we didn't get any responses, right? Like for the longest time, there's radio silence. And then we go and say, like, you know what, let's not sell, let's just get people's perspectives. And we say, hey, this is what I've built the product for. It's going to help with attrition and a couple of other different metrics. And they say, well, for me, that's not a problem at all. I don't have this issue. So, and I have like ABC tools and I'm very entrenched in these products. Sometimes that's the answer, right? Especially when you go to a different market. If you have some very deeply market entrenched players, it becomes very hard to convert customers from those products. Then the question is there a segment where people have not bought the product that you can actually go and capture? Or within the segment that's already bought the product itself, is there a small segue for you to enter, meaning can you enter and then penetrate that particular account? Those are kind of the strategic questions and the decisions that we need to be taking. And we've uncovered all these instances, as a
Yeah.
part of our GTM exercise.
Then what do SDRs do then? Should they like, because for me, if I'm looking at it, where I have to make sure I wait for a signal from ICP to probably be interested in my product, that's a longer cycle at the end of the day. So when we are even told in a situation that you have to wait for that right intent signal, do you think how do you think that they should be going about with such cases, right?
It's actually a very good question. Actually, it's not a longer cycle. It becomes a shorter cycle, because if you were to shoot messages randomly to people, you will get nothing. That's the longer cycle. In this instance, we're talking about the fact that, let's say you pick up a particular intent signal, you may end up getting 50 to 100 people. If you write the right messages to those 50 to 100 people, you will get leads and appointments from that segment. You've exhausted it. Then you pick up another different intent signal, which will give you another 50 to 100 people. So what should SDRs be doing? They should really be applying themselves and thinking, what are these signals that will give me intent heavy accounts, those 50 to 100 accounts, with which I'll be able to run a campaign for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. How quickly can I cycle back to the original intent signal that I used? There are like 18 or 20.
Yeah.
You can easily see out of that maybe 9 or 10 might be relevant for you. Use those 9 or 10 and then you can come back. By then there'll be new people who've done a new hire, for example. So for SDRs, like I originally said, less of the activity that can be templatized should be done by them, and more of the thought process is really what they should be focusing on. This is also why at Ladle, when we do trainings, we do actually bi-weekly trainings, we also do monthly trainings. We train people not just on, like, let's say a cold call training happens, we'll not be telling them this is your script, read it. We actually show people these are the problem statements, these are the value propositions. Don't have a script, test it and show me. Test this and tell me what people say, and then somebody responds to them. Now once they have a problem statement, they have a value map to it, test that and see whether they respond, right? That's the thought. You need to teach people how to think.
I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah. And this comes from, and we also do, for example, when we do our email training or our LinkedIn training, that's what we're telling them. This is the product. This is what the customer is saying should be, the ICP, and this is what the customer is saying should be the value proposition. Come up with 2 cohorts at least, 2 ideas of intents to tap. And they have to do this every week. If they do that every week, they start developing thought processes about, you've met people from our team, right? And these are guys with, like, I'm very proud of them, right? They've been around for 2-3 years, but you can see how they have very evolved thought processes.
Yeah, they do.
Right?
They do.
So that's a product of, nobody just becomes an expert overnight. They need to be taught how to think. And then once you do that, you can sit back and relax at your level. As a manager, I'm saying.
Amazing. I think that's quite a bit in terms of, how data signals actually work. Another person that I am really able to relate with when it comes to, industry specific insights to how you work in different markets, and also not training sales the way you train them. You can't give them a script to
Correct.
train. I'm sorry. Like, you can't give them a script to, speak out exactly the same word to word, to make sure you win a new deal the exact same way you probably won your first deal. So I think that's something we want to also make sure people are learning about, and I'm glad I'm doing that with you, because we kind of connect in that way on how people are doing these smaller, very lesser touched upon areas. They are not really doing it correctly in terms of, it's more like, you're going to school every day and you're supposed to sit in a training session and you're supposed to learn everything from there. Expect to implement it exactly in the field, in the market today, where things have evolved to, like, literally every single hour that you see, there's something new happening. So I think that's something I'm glad that we were able to cover on how people can do it better.
Thank you. I really hope that one of the biggest things that people understand is that training needs to be continuous. Does not happen in most places.
Yeah.
If you don't train your SDRs continuously, how are they going to learn about best practices? Are we at least allocating some time specifically and telling them this is the time you spend, go look at XYZ accounts on LinkedIn? We do that also. We do training, we tell people to go and look at specific accounts. At their level, they can learn a lot from somebody one step higher than them. right? And they will all teach different things. I'm not the expert, I'm one
Yeah.
expert. There are so many other people who are equally good. They may be better at certain things, and they need to be learning from everybody and finding their voice, their strategies, and their thought processes. So that's something I really think all SDRs need to be doing, and I think companies also need to be training people very intentionally. Training does not happen unless you do it intentionally.
I think it's required only so that at the end of the day, the quick response or result that they want, I think it'll be much more easier when they do it this way in terms of
Absolutely.
training them.
Yeah.
I think that's what is, I mean, the industry leaders should probably be even
Yeah.
getting at the end of the day that it's more about like you tell them this is what it is and they're able to come up with a solution
Correct.
as quick as they want the results to be.
Yeah.
But nice. I think we are good.
Awesome.